really warm welcome to this online marketplaces conference here, sharing best practices here powered by the ICMA. We are super happy that so many of you are here today and are joining us in this session. And normally, probably we would have met in person in Berlin. So at least that at one point was the plan. To meet up in Berlin in fall. As you know, all of you know, obviously we had to make a change of plans, and yeah, so we're obviously not meeting in Berlin, but hopefully we will be coming back to physical meetings next year. We're not very sure about this yet, and I guess it's all around the world that people are wondering what 2021 is going to look like, and when we will be able to actually have meetups like that. But nevertheless, we try to keep things moving and keep the industry together. So as many of you, I'm sure, have seen and been with us, we have been throughout the whole year been opening the floor here for some experience exchange and especially given the pandemic, a format for discussion amongst us. And it's a pleasure to have all of you here. And before we're going to be looking at some more details about these 2 days, I actually want to hand it over to Sang-Woo Pai here, the head of the board of ICMA, and he's going to say a few welcoming words to you, and then we will kick off the session.
All right, so let's do this. Shall we just click to the next slide, please? All right. On behalf of all great members and of course the hardworking board, we all do this in our sort of part-time. We want to welcome you warmly. I look outside and just at this moment the sun is coming out here in the otherwise pretty cold and dim Berlin place at the moment. So good sign from heaven for this session. So welcome. Let me just quickly say a few words about our organization. Many of you are maybe not familiar with this, but as I see at the list of participants, a number of people who went to our conferences are also attending. So let me just be really quick. So who are we as ICMA? It's a small association, but a very special one. Yeah, first and foremost, we are a non-profit organization, and that is also a key and also a kind of secret source, because what we do here is from operators, from entrepreneurs and executives for operators, executives and entrepreneurs. We're not trying to sell any reports to you. We do this on a voluntary basis. We are not getting paid, but we want to advance the knowledge of our respective segments and the industry and as a whole. So that is for us the key differentiator from ICMA to other well-known events. Maybe you have been attending also virtually this year. So we are pretty old by now, so over 30 years in fact. Pretty broad member base and also attendees, quite international, which we really like in order to get perspectives from different markets and industries. But that is the fantastic thing. We always get down together and find common and face common issues, and also are able to discuss common and good best practices and solutions for our individual problems that we experience in our daily operations. So we are small, as I said, but fully dedicated only for the classified industry and the respective verticals underneath. So I briefly mentioned the sharing best practice sessions, which we kind of invented in 2007, and since then has been more or less the heart and the beef to the bone of our get-togethers. Because here, in a very intimate setting, we openly discuss all kinds of issues ranging from sales, operations, strategy, product, marketing, in order to really go down and talk business also on a very detailed level. So we don't talk about general stuff. No, we go really down to the bits and bytes, talking about everything that concerns our daily and also strategic questions. So that is something quite special, and we really love this because we can hear in such a setting, we can be totally open minded, and that creates a special kind of atmosphere, and we really strongly recommend and urge you to come for one of our next physical meetings, which we wanted to hold in last time in Helsinki in spring, and also October, November in Berlin. Yeah, but this year was totally different. Don't have to go deeper on that, of course, but we were still, as a community, quite active. So we tried to get a sense and get our heads around the COVID-19 impact on our businesses in different markets. So we had a first survey about how did the COVID impact your business at that time. We were a bit too optimistic when we did the second survey, because most people said, hey, Corona is maybe gone already, and the key messages there from the second survey was, hey, we are basically back to normal. Well, we are in October, November now, and the situation is certainly different. So we shall do a third survey and get your view from everybody who participates on what does it mean. You know, is there a second wave hitting us, our markets, not, or if so, what way, etc. So we will do this again, because the insights that we generated out of those surveys were quite interesting, very detailed and profound. We did a few best practice sessions online. We also tried to keep our spirits high with happy hours for our members. By the way, membership is super easy to obtain. It doesn't cost a fortune. Again, as a non-profit, we are not trying to make money here as much. We just want to cover our basic costs to organize and run those conferences and meetups. So we are trying to be still very engaging, and it works. When I remember the last call, we had Burak from Istanbul giving cheers while being on a boat or his summer retreat or something. That was quite quite lovely, and we actively sharing our remember those good days when we were able to go on holidays, photos exchange. So also happy and extend an invitation to join those activities. Yeah, but we are most excited about today and the content that we want to present to you, and we are super happy for such a great lineup. It's a short conference in abbreviations. Of course, we wanted to make it shorter to also have for easier digestions, so to speak, and to focus on just a few contributions. And yeah, before I give over the floor to Mike again, thank you very much that you guys were willing to contribute. We are super happy to have such renowned speakers here. Very happy to have yeah, one of the superstar investors on this session here today. We're really happy about Speed Invest participating and giving their view, and some real a live example from Irento and Campata. Very exciting topics to hear about. But let me stop talking and over to you, Mike, and let's start.
Thank you very much, Sang-Woo, for the opening words and the kind introduction from your end. So yeah, speaking of the fantastic lineup that you have been mentioning already, so you mentioned it. We have Fabrice coming up just in a few seconds, and before we jump into that, let me just give a short spoiler about our program tomorrow, because also tomorrow we're starting at 3 o'clock with a fantastic session, and we have here Ovidio Solomonov from Adevinta, who's going to give us his view on the post-pandemic world for classifieds and marketplaces. We have a very well-known Harvard Prize professor from the NYU, so the New York University, Arun Sundararajan, speaking to us tomorrow, as well as Colin Snett from Alpaca. So it probably is, if not the best, at least one of the best lineups that we have probably ever had, actually, at ICMA. So I'm super glad to now hand it over to Fabrice. Grinda, actually, Fabrice, I don't think that I have to introduce you much. You're super well known to the community, one of the superstar investors. You've had over 150 exits and approximately 500 angel investments. You're probably best known, I guess, for being the co-founder of OLX and having headed the operation for many years. So Fabrice, what are you going to be talking about today?
So thank you for having me. So what I want to talk about today is what are the latest trends in marketplaces? What are the current theses that we're following? And both in marketplaces, in specifically and more in general in different categories like food, real estate, lending, etc. But before I dive into this, I actually wanted to give a little bit of background as to why my seeming lifelong obsession with a combination of marketplaces and killing Craigslist, and because it's not necessarily obvious, and I think many things in life happen through happenstance. I got my first PC in '84 when I was 10. It was like love at first click. Immediately, you started using it for expressing my creativity. I started building a BBS, etc. But to me, what really seemed to connect with me in my teens was actually when I started reading Ricardo and Adam Smith on the Wealth of Nations, and realized that, to me, economics and incentive systems seem to explain the way the world worked around me better than anything else. Which is why when I went to Princeton in '92, rather than continuing to study computer science, I decided I was going to focus on economics, and actually a big part of it into market design. Now, I actually didn't do any of this thinking, oh, this is going to be my future professional endeavors. There was more intellectual curiosity in terms of the way the world worked. I knew I wanted to be a tech entrepreneur, didn't really think of marketplaces as the place to necessarily operate. But then in June of '98, I came across the eBay website, and for the second time in my life, it was love at first click. The idea that you could bring liquidity and transparency to markets that were otherwise previously opaque, and you could unleash tremendous value, became obvious for the first time. And as a 23-year-old, when I started thinking through the type of skills that I had and the things I could be building, it made a lot more sense for me to build marketplaces, because if you want to build an Amazon, you need billions of dollars, you need inventory, you need supply chain skills. To build E-Trade, you need a banking license, etc. Now, building marketplaces has its own challenges in terms of matching supply and demand, dealing with the chicken and egg problem. But these were the types of challenges that I was perfectly suited for, because I've spent a lot of time studying market design. What is the correct rate? How do you establish or evaluate the elasticity of supply and the elasticity of demand to understand where you take the rake, what the correct rake is, how do you match liquidity, how do you create the best practices? Actually, just one quick second. Are you all seeing my screen?
At least I do.
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. Good enough. So, went down that path of building marketplaces, for the eBays of Europe, and then with Deremate with Latin America, which ultimately became Mercado Libre, which led ultimately to the creation of OLX, with the success we know today. Now, I wanted to talk about where in 2020 do we stand in marketplaces and where are the latest trends. So this is a famous slide from 2011, I think, of all the verticals that we're attacking Craigslist. And Craigslist was being attacked category by category, and this is happening to all the classified sites around the world, at least in the large markets where you can actually sustain verticals in any of the given markets. Now, most people would have said a few years ago, this is kind of done. But actually, the reality is that the verticalization of the horizontal sites is continuing, and the supposed niche sites are bigger than you might imagine. So first of all, the eBays of the world and the product categories are being verticalized deeply. So an example is TCG Player. TCG Player is a Magic the Gathering marketplace. And most people would tell you, wait a minute, Magic the Gathering, why would that cannot be that big? Well, it's a $4 billion market. And then you had Pokemon and got a few more billion. TCG Player is already over 100 million a year in sales. And the way they were built is a way the horizontal would never go after this. This is basically a comic book store owner that realized that there's so many SKUs in Magic the Gathering that none of the current POS systems were great for dealing with it. So he built his own and realized that if he was trying to sell it to other comic book stores, that was not going to be a big business. But if he gave it away for free and then said, we'll build a marketplace on top and I'll take 10% of whatever sells if you want to sell, it was an amazing way to grow the market. And as I said, now they're over 100 million. And this is happening in every category. So in home services, the likes of Thumbtack or Home Advisor are being verticalized by sites like Block Renovation, where basically you say, oh, I want to redo my bathroom. You just pick 4 designs, they pick the contractor for you, and it's a much better experience. The price is guaranteed and an outcome with a much higher NPS. So the old model, of course, is I would say I need to redo my bathroom, and hundreds of people apply, and you have to go through it. Same thing is happening on Upwork in the remote work category, where you have things like Comet, which allows you to find developers, or Advisable to find marketing talent, and even things that are reasonably vertical like Rev, which is a transcription marketplace, is being verticalized by things like Robin, which is a medical transcription marketplace. And even categories where people would say, wait a minute, why does that need to be verticalized are happening? So if you look at Uber Eats, you're seeing Slice, which is a pizza delivery app, or Chaobus, which is a Chinese food delivery app. And as I talk about the future of food and the future of work, I'll explain why actually that verticalization makes sense. The second big trend in marketplaces is changing these old models where the buyer and the seller need to interact and need to agree to terms and conditions and to agree to do a deal, which requires a lot of work, especially on the demand side, to ones where the marketplace is picking the supply, right? So in the old model, I go to Upwork, I say I want to hire a software engineer, and hundreds apply. I need to interview them, filter them, and pick the right one. The new model is I say I need a backend or a full stack engineer, and boom, Comet says this is the right programmer for you. On Rev.com, you don't pick your transcriber. You just send the product you need to transcribe. Rev picks the transcriber for you. On Miro, you don't pick your photographer. Miro picks the photographer for you. And that leads ultimately to the equivalent of, you can essentially have 100% success rate in the transactions. It's a much higher NPS to the consumer or to the business that's consuming the product. It looks as though the marketplace is providing the service, but actually it remains a marketplace. And And it's definitely the trend where you have much better outcomes. You can grow these companies a lot faster than anything before. And the third big trend in marketplaces that we've been seeing is B2B marketplaces. Now, in the B2B, in the consumer world, we've seen extraordinary improvements in user experiences with the Airbnbs and Ubers, et cetera, of the world. And it's only now coming to B2B. So we're now investors in companies like Node, which is a petrochemicals marketplace, or RigUp, which is a oil services worker marketplace that works on behalf of the oil services companies, and they're doing billions in annual volume. But this is happening essentially in every vertical. I mean, we're investors in a company called Tread. Tread is a marketplace for dump truck drivers, and that seems ridiculous. Again, 37 billion a year market. Trusted, a nurses marketplace. Proxy, which is a marketplace between the fisheries and the supermarkets. Or obviously Flexport, which is an online digital freight forwarder. And we're at the very beginning of that trend. And so most of the new marketplaces we're seeing are B2B, and many of them actually are a combination of all the trends that I just described. Many of them are vertical. They're marketplace spec, the marketplace specs your supplier, and often they offer a free SaaS tool to one side of the marketplace in order to lock them in and do something that no horizontal side would ever do. And because we're still at the beginning of this trend, and this trend I think is only beginning now because we're seeing the older generation of executives leading the Fortune 500 who had their secretaries print their emails for them being replaced by younger executives in 30s or 40s who are really digital natives and expect to have the same level of convenience in their professional lives that they had in their personal lives. And it's also happening in the SMBs as the millennials are inheriting or being given the companies their elderly boomer parents were running and want them to be digitized, which is why every one of them is now having online ordering systems, etc. Now, diving specifically in different categories. So if you look at food, there are a number of really mega trends that are really interesting. So in food, the emergence of dark kitchens is fundamentally decreasing the cost of providing food. So right now, it's actually too expensive if you look at the overall online food ordering market, it's actually rather small. Food in the US, about 550 billion a year in grocery and another like 700 billion in restaurants. And Instacart plus Uber Eats plus Seamless Grubhub plus DoorDash plus Postmates, it's probably like 50 billion. So it's like 5% of the food is ordered online. The reason it's actually expensive to create because it's being created in restaurants that have high cost structure from a real estate and labor perspective, and delivery is expensive. But in a world in the future where you can imagine that everything's created in dark kitchens with very low cost structure, the food is pre-prepared. Maybe you have robots helping the food preparation, further lowering costs. You have increased density leading to lower delivery costs. You have autonomy through drones or self-driving vehicles. You can imagine a world where you can order in the future extraordinarily high quality food, full transparency, organic, every single dietary restriction taken care of, delivered in less than 20 minutes, probably less than 15 minutes, for much less than it would be possible for you to make that food on your own, and not even including the opportunity cost of your time. So in that world, probably over 50% of the food will be ordered online. So we're actually at the very beginning of the food revolution. I can see these companies and this category being 500 billion, if 500 billion or more, and perhaps even a trillion of it going online in the long run. And my timeline for that is about a decade. And when you think of that, that is a lot of implications as to what the future looks like. So it probably means you're going to have much fewer new restaurants because of the higher food costs that are being created, but probably actually a lot more brands that are going to be created that are online only, brands that are built on top of the dark kitchens and using delivery of the platforms. And so you can think through a future where all the off-premise revenues of everyone are going to be increased dramatically. And so the current seeming winners can actually be 10x bigger, 15x bigger than they currently are. And it's actually leading to a lot of specialization. So now, as I said, we're seeing in the US like B2B food marketplaces. We're seeing pizza or Chinese food delivery marketplaces. We're seeing pickup marketplaces. And we're seeing the entire supply chain being disrupted. So in the dark kitchen, you have the infrastructure providers, the cloud kitchens of the world. They're kind of the AWS you build things onto. You have the virtual restaurant brands that are being built, the Mealcos of the world, or Taster or Keats. You have the the automation companies, either directly to consumer, like Truebird, which is a robot coffee company, or selling the technology for people to be better. And then you have the vertical grocery companies like Wild Alaskan, which allows you to get fish in a box every month. And then you're seeing a lot of B2B marketplaces completely disrupting the food category. So you have the equivalent of like Food by Us or Choco Reki, where the restaurants can now order from their suppliers and mobile and online, or you have the B2B marketplaces for grocery, like Trade Depot in Nigeria, or Magalup in Germany, or Cheaper in Mexico and Colombia, that are completely, or Vori and Mabel in the US, that are completely disrupting the way the corner bodegas and grocery stores are ordering food. And most of these are, by the way, through marketplaces. Like 99% of these are marketplaces. The next trend we're going to see in food is actually the transition to lab-grown meat, probably a decade away to get the right quality of food, but gives you a sense that there will be another layer of innovation. Future of work. And future of work is also something that's interesting. If you look at the way humans are currently allocating their time, a lot of the work you do is not the work you want to be doing, right? If you're a photographer, you want to be taking photos. Yet, if you start your photography business, you end up like spending all your time finding clients, invoicing, editing, post-processing, doing customer care, etc. And that's why my vision of the future of work is one where the individuals will do the job that they love to do, and everything else will be done for them. And that's why if you're a photographer, you work for Miro. Miro will do everything else. You just take the photos. If you're a transcriber, you work for Rev. They'll provide you amazing tools to do your job better, and they'll do everything else for you. And this is actually where my vertical food companies, in a way, kind of come in. If you think of the pizza market, so taking the Slice example, in the case of Slice, so pizza in the US, about $43 billion. 33% is controlled by Domino's, Pizza Hut, and Papa John's. But 66% is actually controlled by the long-tailed pizzerias. There's 60,000 of them. And they're run by Luigi. Now, what does Luigi want to do? He wants to cook pizza. What does Luigi not want to do is like pick up the phone, do packaging, answer comments on Yelp and TripAdvisor, create a website. And in fact, most of them, these long-tailed pizzerias, don't have a website, don't have online food ordering. So Slice has gone to them and said, you know what? We're going to do all that for you, let you do what you'd love to do, and we'll take 10%. And so they're not actually competing with the Uber Eats of the world. They're actually just converting the existing customers to the pizzerias and bringing them online and making the operations of these pizzerias better. Same way Chaobus is helping the Chinese store owners bring and digitize their operations and creating an amazing online ordering application for them. And Slice now is in the hundreds of millions of revenues, and same thing with for Chaobus. And so in this case, you're crossing the vision of the future of work with a future of food, with verticalization of the large horizontals, which is only at the very beginning. Now, a lot of trends we're seeing in the marketplaces when it comes to job, we're seeing a lot of like staffing or online staffing companies that are growing, and remote work companies that are growing really rapidly. And then we're seeing a lot of vertical marketplace companies, many of which I mentioned before, like RigUp, Trusted, Comment, but like it's happening in every category. Advisable, as I mentioned before, for marketing talent, et cetera. Now, in real estate, when we look throughout the world, it looks like because it is the primary asset class for most people, people are actually increasing as they get wealthier, or increasing their usage of brokers. And so the idea that you're going to go and sell directly and try to bypass the broker commission, or that the purple bricks of the world is not my vision of where the world ends. I think my vision of the world ends is you have digital brokers that actually still keep provider service, because you want to be reassured that you're making the right decision, but will have a much improved quality experience relative to today. Right? Today, if you think about it, if you want to sell your home, you need to pick a broker. Then you need to keep your apartment clean. Then you need to list it. Then eventually you need to keep it clean while people visit it. Then you accept an offer. Then it takes a long time. And that's where things like the iBuyers are fundamentally transforming the experience by helping sellers sell their apartments a lot quicker. And so we're seeing a number of of trends here where we're basically improving the existing experience, but we're actually not disrupting the broker, the real estate agents. They remain in the transaction. So you have a lot of the iBuyer models. You have a lot of new lending models that are a lot simpler. You have the tech-enabled brokerages, and then you have a lot of the either co-living businesses or short-term stay businesses like Sonder or Ollie that are disrupting the category and addressing different ways the fact that we have limited real estate inventory around the world. And actually, by the way, even in any of these verticals or categories, you have differentiation. So the way the iBuyers are done in the US, the likes of Open Door, because it's a very efficient market, it's much more, okay, create this transparency in pricing, get the transactions to be done quickly. In less transparent markets or efficient markets, like in Brazil for Loft or in Finland or Spain for Codit, it's more, can we find inexpensive apartments, fix them up, and then sell them at a premium? So even within the iBuyer model, you're seeing nuances. And I'll stop on the future of lending. So if you look at like some of the biggest categories out there where people hate the interactions they have, and it's definitely with their bank, right? Like creating a bank account is painful, getting a loan from a bank is painful, and there are a lot of startups that had started attacking it, right? So Fundbox is doing factoring. You had Lending Club or Funding Circle, which is like kind of Gen 1 of lending. And these are also being verticalized, right? ScratchPay now allows you to get a loan at the point of sale when you're at the vet. ProducePay is lending to produce farmers based on expected future production. And companies like Clearbank, I find extraordinarily innovative because they basically will lend to online small business owners, like if you have a Shopify store, based on an analysis of what is the profitability of your marketing spend. So they'll log into your Shopify, they'll log into your Google AdWords and your Facebook marketing, and if you have positive ROI on the marketing, they'll lend you money against it. You can imagine that whatever Citibank will never do that, right? Like the idea that Citibank is going to log into your Shopify and then look at the profitability of your Google spending is ridiculous. And so they are set because of much higher NPS, much higher alignment with the way the world is heading to be ginormous in the future, and companies in that category and really disrupt their existing lending ecosystem. And all of these are marketplaces. So basically, I guess all in all, we're still at the very beginning of both the tech revolution and the marketplace revolution. And wonderful, I guess, years lie ahead as we're taking all these categories that have like low NPS, broken user experiences, expensive, and transforming them. The one thing I didn't touch upon that probably is worth mentioning because it's been a big trend that I'm ICMA is, of course, the transactionalization of marketplaces. So marketplaces are becoming transactional, and if you look at the more old school marketplaces, they're being led by the Vinted of the world or the Wallopops of the world, where now you have like buyer paid escrow services, like a large percent, the vast majority of the revenues already for these are no longer coming from the traditional either listing fees or subscription services, but actually from the optional escrow and payment services around transactions, both local transactions and national transactions. And so classifieds are becoming transactional, and we're only at the very beginning of that trend. Only 2 companies I think have done it rather well, which are, as I mentioned, Wallapop and Vinted. But I think ultimately even my old company OLX and Adevinta, et cetera, will all come to it and figure out exactly how to do it. And my intuition, by the way, is that the eBay classified group transaction really only makes sense if you can actually move eBay Kleinanzeigen to transactional. But we'll see how that plays out in the coming years. So with all that said, I'll pause here and leave it open for questions.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Fabrice. It's been a pleasure to actually run through and even rush through the main topics of your speech today and your input that you've been given. This has been really wonderful. We have a couple of questions coming in here, and if you haven't already done it, please take now the chance to post your questions into the chat if you want to, or you can also just simply unmute yourself and ask your question directly in live, which is actually just as good and maybe even more fun. But for the meantime, until we have some live questions in, I would start it off with a question coming in from Christian. who's asking you and congratulating on your great speech, and then asking you, so where do you see the biggest chance for the existing horizontals? Any view on this, Fabrice?
Clearly, to me, the biggest opportunity is to go transactional. The quality of the experience you can provide is so much greater when you go end to end. And I think you can do it actually even locally. So Wellapop, for instance, just launched door to door. So even though you may be, both you and the seller may be in the same city, the convenience of like having someone pick it up and deliver it to the other door makes a lot of sense. And the way you design it, so that you need to really think through who do you charge, and most of the and how much you charge, and most of the other classified sites have not designed it very well. The person benefiting from having an escrow is the buyer, so it really needs to be buyer paid. So and you want to integrate shipping to it. So when you integrate shipping for a couple of euros, plus you add maybe a 5% fee for escrow, you can get a take rate that increases very dramatically. And so we've seen, like, I think in Vinted now, like 90% of the users in France use the optional escrow and shipping service. And it's optional. If you want to transact in person for free, you can actually do it. Now, the door-to-door is actually a benefit to the seller. He doesn't need to go to the post office. He doesn't need to deliver the item. So actually, we charge that to the seller. And so actually thinking through how much to charge, et cetera, but the potential there is ginormous. Now, if you're a dominant horizontal in a secondary market, you have fundamental opportunities to verticalize. That for someone like me to invest in a vertical marketplace, the economics need to make sense. I need to be able to the company needs to be able to recoup its customer acquisition costs over after 6 months, and maybe at least 3x their customer acquisition costs in the first 18 months, which means that you need either a high average order value, which you have in like real estate, cars, et cetera, or you need a lot of recurring transactions. And there are categories where you have that. There are categories where you don't have that. When you don't have that, it will remain on the horizontal. When you do have that, it can be verticalized. But if you're in a secondary market, and by secondary, I don't even mean Chile, I mean like whatever, Italy. Now, most likely, it's possible that no startup is going to be funded to go after this. And so the horizontal can go after the category and can take it. And so you can start verticalizing and creating amazing tools for the supply and the demand side and owning it. I mean, if you look at OLX in Portugal today, it's now like, or in Russia with Avito, you know, we're the leading horizontal site, but also car site, job site, real estate site, auction site, transactional site. And now the next opportunity is to go deep. Like, okay, let's create a bespoke, unique opportunity in cell phones and computer parts and video games and really try to own each component. And you can't, I wouldn't do that. If you're in the US, I mean, first of all, Craigslist is incompetent, and so they would never do that. But it's way harder because you have a lot of VC. The market's so big that you can build a TCG player. You know, TCG player doesn't, you're not going to build TCG player in Spain. In Spain, it could be Wellapop.
Fabrice, we have a lot of questions coming in here, so I'll try to just catch a few before we need to then move on. One, this is speaking of big markets and big developments here. There's one question actually coming in from Elias here. Very interesting question, I find. Geopolitically, he's asking, what about the topic between the US and China? Where do you see Alibaba's future in this? Any take on this from your end?
Sure. I mean, so I was a lucky early investor in Alibaba. And Alibaba has about an 80% market share in China. And interestingly, in a way, I mean, so first, a few things. China is actually ahead of the curve of the US in e-commerce penetration. Of all purchases online in the US, about 15%, of all purchases, 15% are online. In China, it's about 25%. Alibaba is ahead of the curve, and Alipay is amazing, right? And you're seeing the Ant Financial IPO as we speak. And in terms of like having very low cost, smooth payment solutions makes a fundamental difference in the acceptance of it in the world. Now, because of geopolitical issues, I suspect that, you know, Alibaba is not going to be a big player in the US the same way that I don't expect any of the US marketplace will be a big player in China. But it doesn't mean that they don't do well. I suspect most of their markets the dominant players the Chinese players will remain dominant in China. Whether or not they're either allowed to or will succeed elsewhere, unclear. I mean, They could do it by acquisition, right? Like if Alibaba bought Coupang, they would be big in Korea. I don't know if geopolitically it'd be allowed, but they still have a very great future ahead of them as GDP per capita is improving in China, as online penetration keeps increasing. Now, do I see the giants fighting with each other? Not really. More likely, the Chinese giants fight with each other, like the Alipay, WePay battle. And then you have the JD versus Alibaba battle in China, more so than an Amazon Alibaba battle royale. They're not really direct competitors.
Okay, I get it. So maybe another question, completely different topic. I'll just jump over to it. It's all about social hiring, buying and selling work with social responsibility? Question mark. What's your take on this?
There's probably a market for it, right? Like, do I think there will be marketplaces that cater to having goods that are considered that are organic, where labor practices are better, et cetera? Probably. What's actually interesting is I suspect that the biggest impact both on ultimate greenhouse gas emissions and quality of life in the suppliers will probably come from the giants actually improving their own practices. And so when Walmart or Amazon decide that they want to tackle greenhouse gas emissions or change the recycling paper, they have such volume, the impact is much larger than actually individuals going and buying a few products in a more socially responsible way. So actually, having them make a difference ultimately has way more leverage, and they're definitely moving in that direction. So, and when it comes to things like greenhouse gas emissions, I'm actually super bullish because of things like solar keeps decreasing, battery costs keep decreasing, we're electrifying the grids, we're moving away from fossil fuels. So I think within 30 years, we'll have moved away from fossil fuels completely just because of the trends in tech, but mostly tech driven. So super optimistic on the future of humanity.
Cool. I think we have time maybe for one or two more questions. We have a lot popping in here, so I'll try to get as many of them as possible. So one of the questions is probably more of a teaser, but asking the question, are the days of Craigslist now finally over? How do you see that?
So Craigslist has lost about 40% of its traffic in the last 5-6 years. I think ICMA tracks that. And it's not just because they've removed personals and prostitution, which, by the way, they should have never had, right? Like, the primary decision makers in all household purchases are women, right? So classified sites have to cater to women. Women decide which house you live in, which car you buy, which babysitter you hire, which couch you're buying. I mean, and so the fact that we're so they're non-moderated, they were scammy, full of crime, etc. They were not catering to the core demographic of traditional classifieds, and they were not doing anything to improve it. And they still have it. I mean, they removed personals, but they still are not moderating the content. They're using the community to moderate the content, which means that the latest ads are all bad. And that's still a fundamental flaw. So they've lost 40% of the traffic. They're being verticalized. But the fact that they're still around, frankly, shows the power of network effects. Now, we're seeing around the world that when the incumbent is weak, Facebook Marketplace or the OfferUps of the world can actually go in and start disrupting them. And so they're taking pretty significant share from Craigslist. It's not, the days are not over. They still have a fair amount of liquidity in a number of verticals or categories in cities in the US. These things die over a long period of time. They have more staying power. I mean, the power of network effects, but they're definitely on the decline.
Fabrice, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Fantastic speech from your end. I really, unfortunately, need to stop the Q&A session here. But actually, there will be one at the very end of the session. So if you still have questions for Fabrice, please just keep it on, keep them coming in the chat, or just save them up for later, because we do have at the end a few minutes, some 15 minutes for additional Q&A and discussion time. And I guess you can definitely extend another question forward. Speaking now of network effects, that's actually one of the core topics that Magda Petrosiani is actually dealing with on a daily basis. So I'm super happy to now have and to be able to announce Magda speaking to us next. She will be, let me give you a few words about Magda first. So she's in Speed Invest X right now, having joined Speed Invest, the specialized marketplaces network effect funds, after having started her own startups and actually exited also them in Poland. And it's my pleasure now to introduce her to you. And Magda, what's your talk gonna be about today?
Hi everyone, and thank you very much, Mike, for this kind introduction, and also to Fabrice for a fantastic presentation. Yes, what I'm going to speak to you about, I would say, is a little bit complementary to what Fabrice has talked about. We are going to speak about the future of marketplaces through the lenses of the existing economic and healthcare crisis. So a couple of things that we will discuss about the similar sectors, like, for example, future of work, but also some other categories where we believe are still huge opportunities that this crisis has unfolded. So let me actually share the screen with you. Hope this will work.
It should.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, we see. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Brilliant. So yes, I'm going to speak about why are we still, or even more optimistic than before, for the opportunities to invest in marketplaces. Okay. So my talk will be around will be divided in 3 parts. I'll briefly introduce the fund, Speed Invest and Speed Invest X team. I'll set the stage a little bit for what we're currently facing through the lenses of the crisis, and introduce a little bit what's been happening in marketplaces during the previous crisis. And lastly, which I believe is also the complementary part to Fabrice's presentation, I will talk about the trends that we are seeing. So yes, so Speed Invest, for those who don't know us, we are a 400 million seed stage fund headquartered in Vienna, with a very pan-European approach, with offices in Berlin, Munich, London, where I'm currently residing, Paris, and also San Francisco. Within the Speed Invest fund, we have a very specialized approach where with separate teams who focus on very specific sectors. So I am part of the Speed Invest X team that is focusing on investments in network effects. So a lot of the companies that we are investing in are marketplaces, platforms, but also technologies that enable them. The fund has started 2 years ago, and it is a $50 million fund dedicated to investments in this sector. Oh, sorry, I cannot. So these are some of our investments that you might know. Companies like Shootflix, which is a digital marketplace for delivery of bulk materials for the construction industry. Tier Mobility, that you might well know from the streets. Coded, which actually Fabrice also mentioned before. Coach Hub, a coaching as a service platform for B2B companies, or Yardlink, which is a marketplace for equipment hire that we actually invested in with our friends from FJ Labs. We have a strong belief that network effects is what really powers the world of startups, and we believe that companies in the sector will continue to deliver significant returns, which is also why we are right now on the journey to close the fundraise for our next generation Speed Invest X fund. So as I mentioned to begin with, I would like to mention a few words about the history of marketplaces and how platforms have really performed in the past during the economic crisis, and why we believe now is the time to invest in marketplaces. So right now, what is really different to the previous economic crisis is that people are right now much more active online. As you can see here, is that the number of users in some of the social media platforms has increased more than tenfold since we had the global financial crisis. Sorry, I cannot stop. And a lot of people who went online are also much frequent users of online platforms, which obviously creates further opportunities for more vertical and specialized players, as well as for emergence of new players in industries that were not previously digitized, which I'm also going to mention about later on. What we have all seen during this pandemic is that the trend of digitization has really pushed a lot of companies and a lot of retailers online. As we see here is the progress that was made during the last during the 1 month of the current pandemic has basically brought the same progress as the last 7 years. During the previous crisis, what really stands out is a lot of very successful platforms and marketplaces were created. So as we see here, a couple of examples include companies like Airbnb that was created in 2007, Square that was founded in 2009, or Groupon that was founded around the same time. And as we know today, all of them have really thrived during those difficult years. Since then, and also throughout the years, marketplaces have created significant value for the users, for economies, and for the shareholders. The vertical platforms here are estimated to be worth around $1.3 trillion. So massive value. And another point that really stands out here is that marketplaces throughout those crises continue to outperform public markets. So when we look at the number of when we look at the unicorns, over 60% of them are actually platforms. Also, when we zoom in and look at the most valuable companies in the world, most of them are actually built on the top of network effects, which makes them so defensible and so valuable in the long term. Here we see a further breakdown in terms of the returns that marketplaces have created for their investors in terms of multiples, where network orchestrators were able to deliver much higher returns than, for example, service providers were able to prove quicker growth and deliver much stronger profit margins. Why is that the case? Why marketplaces have such a huge potential, and why are they so interesting to invest during the crisis? So one is the aforementioned network effect, which makes those marketplaces so resilient and so hard to replace once they're up and running. Second is that marketplaces by definition are rather asset-light models, apart from maybe some of the full stack marketplaces, which started only to emerge recently. But as a definition, most of them are really asset-light. So what they benefit from is the opportunity to really adjust and adapt with the changing circumstances. So what we see here is actually the proof or an example of that, with how quickly Airbnb, that operates an asset-light model, was able to rebound from the crisis as compared to Marriott, that operates an asset-heavy model. So now, what I want to talk about is the core of this presentation are the trends that we are seeing in the marketplaces world, and some of the trends that we've already started to emerge before the pandemic that we believe will especially flourish now and in the post-pandemic world. So there are four categories that I decided to talk about and to focus on in today's presentation. And these are future of work and passion economy, which we're particularly passionate about at SpinVestX, education, supply chain and logistics, and briefly touch on health and wellness. It's obviously a huge topic, but I'll highlight some of the trends that we're seeing from the marketplace's perspective. So in terms of future of work, there are three angles how we look at it: recruitment, full-time employee management, and flexible work, where we're seeing especially a lot of activity and a lot of innovation. Although in the current downturn, a lot of the economic output went down, the war for talent really continues. There's been increasing pressure from the hiring managers to really not only digitize, but also optimize their existing processes, as they cannot meet their candidates in person. And regular screening doesn't really satisfy the needs of companies anymore, which is why we started to see a lot of activity in the sector, enabling hiring managers to improve and digitize the hiring processes. And here are examples of two companies that I wanted to highlight. Circular, which is a marketplace for B2B marketplace for companies that are able to exchange candidates between each other from the funnel. So completely new model that didn't exist before, that really digitizes that person-to-person interaction before, that regular conversation that two HR managers would have. And Heroes Jobs, which is a Snapchat-like recruitment platform for jobs that have particular emphasis on the interpersonal skills. I will actually show you a little demo in a bit. Hopefully it will work. And another trend that we've seen within the recruitment sector are vertically focused solutions that also Fabrice talked about. So RigUp, which is the platform for oil and gas and overall energy workers, that helps companies within that sector to source and manage candidates. And then Medwing, which is an equivalent of a vertically focused platform for the healthcare industry, which we have all so much relied on recently. The reason why we're saying verticalization here is that the horizontal platforms are not really able to provide the same quality of the experience and adjust and tailor the processes in order to make the life of a hiring manager more efficient and also make the processes cheaper. So now is the test.
This is Heroes Jobs, where real people connect with real brands. It all starts with users recording mini videos just like Snapchat. Relax, we got examples for the shy ones. When they're done, they swipe through brands closest to them. Oh look, Kate from Joe and the Juice is saying hi. Then they can discover the cool benefits. If they want to work here, they apply in just one tap. Yay, application submitted. Now, where do the videos go? Well, they arrive on the Recruiter app where managers swipe through them. Bye-bye useless cover letters and resumes. Candidates' experiences and availabilities are all right here. They like this one? Just chat to set up an interview. Easy, right? Welcome to the future of recruitment.
So yeah, as you see, this was an example of our portfolio company, Heroes Jobs, that really helps to digitize the process of assessing interpersonal skills, which normally is not possible based on just pure assessment of a paper CV. Going further within the future of work sector, focusing on the full-time employment. So what has really changed during the pandemic is that more and more companies started to be more willing to accept employees working from different venues and different, maybe even different countries, working full-time, which is important to emphasize. The adoption of distributed model of work has really accelerated, and because of that, we're also in such a big need of improved infrastructure. One problem that companies who want to hire full-time in other countries than their initial primary residence, the problem is of payroll and compliance. And usually the process of setting up a subsidiary takes quite a lot of time. It can take a couple of months up to a year, which is why we've seen really growth in platforms providing infrastructures to hire full-time employees in a compliant way. And examples of companies here is, for example, Boundless or remote.com, which has also raised quite a significant round recently. Further, obviously, as we all work from home offices and see different colors of our home walls, we need more tailored and more specialized solution. You have probably all observed that in the recent months, we have seen a couple of different online video conferencing platforms emerging. And to us, it's been a large topic because we believe that this is just the beginning. Hopin, which you might have heard of, was one of the big platforms raising quite a substantial round, and we believe there will be more platforms catering to more specific needs, where the setup of the platform and the way the interactions online are resembled will differ, and this will be the source of differentiation within those platforms. I'm going to actually also tell you I'm going to show you a brief demo of a company called Tio, which provides a completely new experience of online conferencing. And lastly, within the full-time employee management trend, what many companies realize is that employee well-being is something that we all really have to pay attention to. Therefore, we've also seen an increased demand for solutions providing well-being, health and well-being solutions to the full-time employees. And examples of companies within those sectors can be, for example, Coach Hub, which is a B2B marketplace for employee coaching, also a SpeedInvest X portfolio, or a company called Remotion, which allows coworkers to stay in touch throughout the day and feel more connected and improve their productivity and communication within the teams. So here, next one, I'm going to show you a little bit of a different experience of video conferencing, which I found really interesting.
Meet Tio, a desktop app that allows communities to connect inside beautiful 3D spaces, like this one, or this one. On Tio, you can interact as an avatar and easily connect with others around you. Whether it's a panel discussion or a business conference, you can set up an event in seconds, send invites, sell tickets, record the event, and so much.
So that was just a brief preview of how future of video conferencing could look like. Flexible work, that is another trend I think we all have seen emerging also before the pandemic, and now this has become more relevant than ever, as many companies don't really care anymore whether an employee will come to the office physically or they will be working from somewhere else. So here the difference is that we're focusing here on the solutions tailoring to contractors as opposed to full-time employees. And one example maybe that I will highlight is the gap that has started to widen as we all need more engineering power to bring businesses online and to improve our infrastructures. And companies like Lambda School is a great example of an enabler that helps to bring more talent into the market by introducing an income sharing agreement, so where the students don't really pay for the education, but the company, Lambda School, takes a cut of their future earnings. So just to speed it up a little bit, as we know, we are running out of time. Another big trend that we've been focused on at SpeedInvest is the passion economy. So just briefly, I'll touch on media, communities, and education. So in general, what we're seeing in the market is the shift from ad-based models such as YouTube to more tool-focused solutions that allow individuals to create products and to monetize their existing knowledge and their existing experience. An example of that could be a company called Substack that you might know, that you might use, which provides newsletter infrastructure for creators that allows them to reach their audiences directly and to monetize their skills directly. And what we have seen here on the right, you see a little cut out from New York Times with an announcement of well-known journalists leaving to start their own little newspaper through Substack. Further, communities. It's also been a very important trend to us. So built or that has emerged pretty much on the back of growth of Facebook, which at some point became too big to be able to cater to specific audiences through the groups feature. So what we have seen is the emergence of businesses like Discord, for example, that focuses on esport fans, or Super Great that focuses on people interested in makeup videos, or Patreon, which is a place where, again, creators can create products to sell to their communities and to earn money directly. So here is an example of how such a Patreon page could look like. Lastly, on the passion economy trend, obviously education is a super important topic, and those of you who have kids have seen the rapid growth and innovation in the sector. What I think is really interesting here is how this has also changed through the model of passion economy. So where individuals who already have certain expertise can create their courses and sell them online through the platforms like Podia or Udemy, therefore also decreasing the cost and access to education for everyone. So one last trend perhaps that we will discuss, and then we can open up to questions, is the supply chain digitization. In the times when salespeople, sales professionals cannot really go directly to their customers, there's been increasing need to create solutions that will digitize that procurement process. And particularly, I think what is really interesting is that the industries that have been historically not really digitized, like construction, are really seeing rapid innovation in adoption of the digital models. And here you see the example of a company called Shootflix that provides bulk materials to construction companies. So yes, this is, I know we're running out of time, so I want to also give you an opportunity to ask some questions.
Definitely. Thank you, Magda. Fantastic talk. Very, very insightful. So now's your time, your chance. Please just speak up. The easiest way to do it is to simply unmute yourself and ask the question live. So anyone? Now's the time.
Don't be shy.
Hi, Magda. I have a question here. I was wondering, what were you guys have quite a few companies in your portfolio. What were the surprises that you saw in this very interesting time since February, March, let's say?
That is a very good question. What were the surprises? So I would say it's been twofold. So one, what I think has been really impressive and also surprising is that how companies that were operating in either a hybrid model with acquiring customers online and conducting the service offline were able to shift within a month completely online. And for example, we've got a company in the US that used to organize offline fitness classes in groups. And obviously this is double trouble, because not only they were catering group exercise, but the event was happening offline. And what they managed to do is within a month to really build a digital platform and turn around their whole business model and start operating an online version. So this has been definitely a surprise that many companies were able to do it at such a speed. So I would say the resilience of startups and ability to innovate and the speed at which this has taken place has been something that has definitely impressed us and strengthen our belief in the management teams of the companies.
Magda, one follow-up question. So about businesses and especially marketplace being more maybe crisis-proof based on network effects. Did you see any of that being reflected in current valuations? So did the EBITDAs go up even further during the crisis, or what were your observations there?
Yeah, in terms of valuations, what we have seen is that at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a little bit of a turmoil, and some rounds started to fall apart or take a little bit longer. But with time, the situation has very quickly stabilized. And what was also surprising is that the valuations at the early stage have not changed at all, not moved anywhere, which was maybe not ideal from the investor point of view, but it is good for founders. What we have seen is perhaps more adjustment at the later stages, so more like Series C, D. There, I think the pandemic has really, in some cases, revealed some valuations that were too high and were maybe not in line with the value that the output that the marketplace was creating. So that is definitely something that we have observed, at least from our perspective. And in terms of resilience of the models, I think maybe another surprising bit is that at the beginning, the assumption was that a lot of the spending categories that were discretionary would go down, like, for example, jewelry, right? This is not really a first need product. And what was surprising is that actually the demand went up. So I would say another kind of not really something that we would have predicted. So overall, I would say all businesses that were able to adapt really quickly, even if they had offline offering, were the winners, irrespective really of the industry.
Interesting. Further questions to Magda? Now's your chance.
Yeah, I'll go for it. I'm Michael from Equipo.
Hey.
I'd like to know if you've seen the opposite happening. That's what I've seen, is that let's say the incumbents suddenly digitized and went into our space. And if you've seen that with other areas, today we did an online auction. We've been doing them virtually since we've started, but with COVID, everybody followed. They had no choice. So it's crowding our space. And has that been happening in other industries as well?
Mm-hmm. Great question. I would actually be curious to understand which of the incumbents. I think when I think about our portfolio and whether there was some movement from the incumbents that suddenly a company that was not catering to some audience started to offer a solution or went online, we have not really experienced that. In terms of like how the companies that we know iterated is that they focused on a very specific audience that perhaps the incumbent would have overlooked or didn't appreciate that the audience would be big enough. So these were some of the approaches that we have seen from our portfolio in order how to walk around a situation where an incumbent would move into the space, to move into more specific use case.
Thank you, Magda. We have time for 1 to 2 additional questions, so take your chance to speak up. Okay, if we don't have a live question, I have one more here from the audience. It came actually in from Robert Hammond, asking how prevalent will the passion economy be going forward? It seems that the entertainment and self-gratification is increasing in the future of work. Any views of this, Magda?
Mm-hmm. I didn't hear the entertainment and self-gratification. Okay, yeah. Interesting. So from our point of view, we see this as a massive shift, as a new sort of paradigm or a platform shift, really, because what is happening is that we are no longer, or creators are no longer reliant on acquisition of customers by the platform. Neither are they reliant on, we have some echo, neither they are dependent on the revenue. So suddenly this really changes the whole dynamic in terms of monetization opportunities, but also how communities are built and how products are delivered. And from our perspective, this is something that is here to stay, and we're seeing more and more industries moving towards that direction, when an individual is able to directly monetize their skills and create products and serve them directly to the user without having to go for an existing distribution platform. So what you can think of is in the past, when, for example, you were an expert in I don't know, let's say cars, you would record videos about reviews about cars and post them on YouTube, right? And then at the end of the month, you would get a review or a summary of your earnings from YouTube based on the views. And what is happening right now is that individual can go and create their own product, therefore actually being able to build significant revenue quicker. So they know it no longer requires to have a reach of hundreds of thousands of users, making it more accessible for everyone to start a business like this, which is obviously really compelling in the times of economic crisis, because people want to have passive income. And this is something that everyone can create on the side. So it really enables everyone to start a business in an easier way. Whether entertainment is a category that will be the dominant one in the passion economy, I'm not too sure. I would say every industry might go through that shift where we would see more direct connection of customer and the creator, not only in the entertainment. Obviously, entertainment is a big sector that is actually probably well suited to be disrupted by such a business model.
Thank you, Magda. One last quick question. I'm going to be asking you for a short answer on that one. Is there any sector that you were seeing not changing as fast as you would have expected during the pandemic?
Sorry, didn't hear the first part. Did any?
So, was there any sector or industry that you saw not changing as fast as you would have expected it?
What a great question. I would say property. It is really surprising that the prices went on opposite direction, at least in London, and that not much has moved there, right? We have seen new business models with, for example, creation of professional traveler or co-working spaces outside of the cities being created, but not that much has changed, even though actually we are less dependent on geography right now. So you would have expected a little bit more change there, but prices remain stable. Not great for the consumers, but good for the renters. I think we are yet to see what will happen in the following years.
Magda, thank you very much for a fantastic talk and a great Q&A session. It's been a pleasure. I hope you will stick around until the end of the session, so we can actually ask you more questions coming up at the end of the session. And now I would like to hand over to Robert. Our pleasure. Thank you. So now it's time for the talk of Robert Rutkowski, who is the Managing Director of Irento and Campanda actually just recently. Robert, we've known each other for a while. It's been a pleasure to be discussing, the different experiences with you all along this crazy ride. And you have been experiencing quite some interesting times during the pandemic, and actually used it as a big chance and actually opportunity to go forward and develop your business with an acquisition of Campanda. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing more about this. And maybe just a few words quickly about you to introduce you to the audience. So you've been with Irento for a long time, and they're responsible for on the group level for driving the revenues, so sales and everything around sales support, and you're also you're also now in this post-acquisition phase, so to speak, of Campanda, which you're going to be talking about, and you're going to be telling us a little bit about the challenges and opportunities that came with that acquisition. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Thanks a lot, Mike. So yeah, first of all, hey everyone, great to see some familiar faces, even though it's done remotely. I'm very happy to be here. And after Magda already gave us a really good bird's eye perspective of the market and changes that happened during the pandemic, I'd like to zoom in a little bit and share our operational story of how, as Mike said, we use this moment actually as an opportunity to grow our business and shift our focus a little bit from where we were before. So this presentation will be a bit of a best practice sharing on basically how COVID gave us this opportunity to shift, and how we had to be very fast and behave in a time critical situation during this pandemic. So first, yeah, briefly about me. Mike already mentioned most of it, so I can be fast here. I'm an MD at Arento. I come from the sales side, so was already with Arento for 8 years, worked in sales and was running the sales team. Now I'm still responsible for the whole revenue and customer facing side, so that's still my main focus alongside of some product jobs. And quickly about the company, so Arento is the largest rental platform in Europe. We're a marketplace focusing on rental, basically everything other than real estate. So biggest sectors are vehicles, events and construction, and also motorhomes. And on the other hand, yeah, I'm also now MD from Campanda, which is a motorhome platform and one of the largest players here as well in Europe. So you can already see there are some synergies, and that's a big reason why we went into this. But I want to tell you a bit why we decided to invest into a motorhome platform during the time of a global booking crisis and while all travelers started canceling their vacations. Maybe first, before we go into that, a little bit of background behind it, which is on the next slide, the pre-pandemic market development. So we obviously are also in the motorhome sector in Arento, so we knew the market already for a long time and we're following it. And the motorhome market has seen a very steady growth over the last years. So we see here from 2016 to 2019 onwards, it has been growing, and we visualize this here by showing the number of overnight stays in focusing on Germany on campsites. So this has been growing by roughly 20%. And in the meantime, the number of RVs that were licensed were growing even more. So Campanda actually was hitting the nail on the head with their timing back then. They were founded in 2013 and had launched in 2014 and had been a growth case ever since during this time. They raised around 17 million of investment with various partners during this time, had a huge success, and you can see also that their traffic numbers, we used here non-paid sessions, were rising really rapidly from around 500,000 per year to 3.5 million, and with their strongest year, including paid traffic, being at 6.5 million in visits per year. So that all looks really promising. However, they were in a bit of trouble before we acquired them because their ROI was actually not so positive due to the large amount of paid traffic, and they were looking for a buyer in order to make the business profitable and do a turnaround. And then, as you can already see, this happened. So with the worst possible timing, we run into a global pandemic, and instead of people booking their summer vacations, they started buying toilet paper and panicked and canceled their vacations. So exactly not what Campanda needed in this moment. Yeah, it was the worst possible timing. And let's look at what this meant in detail. So we see here the cancellation impact that Campanda was facing. Keep in mind, during a time where they were looking for a new purchaser. So we had here, of course, a huge spike in cancellations as we saw over the whole travel industry during this time. Very big financial exposure because Campanda is a booking platform. Therefore, refunds were supposed to be paid back with cancellations, of course. And therefore, yeah, quite some financial exposure and a big problem that they were facing, basically. Then we came along. So we heard about it. The former or other investors were not so keen on investing now during this time because travel was the least attractive industry you wanted to invest in this moment. But since we had some market background knowledge, we knew that actually motorhomes could become a big winner of the pandemic once the travel restrictions get a bit lighter. So we were immediately interested. We knew the market and we saw the chance. And therefore, also we saw a lot of synergies with the market that we already knew about motorhomes, and knew that we can run it a lot more efficiently if we run two platforms with different business models, but with the same type of sellers and the same behavior. And therefore, we were immediately very interested in that, and we're actually not scared away by the impact on the travel sector in this moment. We had to, however, be extremely fast in this decision-making process, because of course, sometime later, everyone knew that this was going to be successful. So really, our opportunity was here to be a fast player. We were not that experienced in M&As before. We had one acquisition of a rental ERP software some years before, and that was it. So out of the blue, we learned about this in late March, had about 4 weeks to do a detailed due diligence process together with Rosmedia. They were extremely helpful here, so thankfully we could use the resources that we have here in the group. Had about 3 weeks of negotiation and deal closing, and then actually signed the deal with seeing the owners for the first time in person at the notary, which was also quite surreal that all of this happened remotely during lockdown. And only once we signed, we had the first face-to-face contact during such an acquisition process. Now ongoing is, of course, the restructuring. And we were immediately in the situation after the acquisition faced with a lot of challenges, of course. So we see here the amount of support tickets and the backlog of support tickets, basically. So with the support numbers being a bit outphased due to cost cutting at Campanda, they were already having a small team. Then you have the biggest cancellation impact ever in the history of the company, which means that there was around 1,000 tickets in the backlog to clean up. And that was the situation where we bought the company. So we were very aware that this is going to be super challenging for us. And we had to do a lot of quick fixes already, which I want to share a little bit with you what we did here. So being a booking platform for us, it was vital that we keep as much commission on the platform as possible. And since luckily our terms and conditions actually allowed us to keep commission even in the event of cancellation, we actually needed to be a bit more harsh here in how we execute our terms and conditions, and actually keep in most of the cases the commission, even though the booking got revoked, because our part of bringing the buyer and renter together was already done. And therefore the rental company had to do with, we tried to have them deal with most of the cancellations, and as said, keep the financial impact for us as low as possible. We simplified the process of how we worked on those cancellations with standard templates, fast email handling, and most importantly, we had for this time no more phone service, because with already a backlog of 1,000 plus tickets, if you would have an active phone line, even though it's desired, we needed to make some not so nice cuts and cut the phone line in order to just get a hold of this backlog. It took us 2 or 3 months to clean everything up, and then it looked a lot more bright. And of course, we started customer service as before, with also the phone service. Next, after that, shortly after we signed, actually, we already saw that there's a good chance that we were right with our predictions, because the market recovered very fast. So you can see here in these lines the traffic from 2019 and the traffic that we saw in 2020 after the travel restrictions got lightened up, and immediately the traffic of non-paid sessions was going up like crazy. We of course used this immediately to get some nice bookings, but first of all, since this was pretty much new to people, and the media got a big hold of this whole situation, with motorhomes being the perfect way to travel, not a lot of contact, no social, a lot of social distancing, you're independent, no need to cross borders. With that being in place, the media got a hold of it, and a lot of people that were previously not interested in motorhomes got interested. So that's why the traffic recovered a bit faster than the inquiries. And next we can see the turnaround in inquiries happened basically a month later, with starting in June and really spiking in July, where all of a sudden people started requesting like there's no tomorrow, because they noticed, hey, we can travel again. Staying in the same country is actually kind of the safest and best way. and some borders were open. So this was really being like a revived hype for the motorhome sector. And despite initial fears and worries of the rental companies, they were actually all able to fill their calendars and to book out all their vehicles. What you need to know is that motorhomes in general are a very availability driven product. So of course in summer they're usually booked out, and in the off season they're not. So in summer most motorhome companies could have double the amount of vehicles than they do, and they would be able to rent it out. However, in this year that no one saw that coming, that this would be possible to fill up the booking calendars, and yet it happened. And of course we were able to get some quick gains out of that as well. Next, I want to show you the ongoing and the upcoming challenges. So first of all, one big challenge that we were facing is that the trust on the end user side definitely got a big hit because of that. So with a lot of cancellations, of course, you also have some people that are not so happy with the way that their refunds were handled, or that they were given out vouchers. And a lot of it is not in our control because it's happening by the rental companies. Still, on the review side, often as a platform, you get those bad reviews. So our Google and Trustpilot score got a lot lower than pre-pandemic and pre-acquisition. And therefore, this was basically after signing, this was up to us to recover this. What we have now in place is new systems of being very active with email campaigns of trying to get good ratings and trying to boost up these Google and Trustpilot scores, so that for the next booking season, we're again ready to post here the right behavior and to show that we're a trustworthy brand. On the other hand, we are doing some live improvements on having badges and tags with corona-friendly cancellations, so that the trust comes back from the end user as soon as possible. On the other hand, on the company side and provider side, we have to focus now a lot on account management. Very similar here. There was not so much service going on, so it's up to us to regain the trust, to really be all over the place, go to trade fairs, pick up the phone as much as possible with a support team, and working on the account management, getting items to be up to date. Availability, as said, is key. So until this is completely optimized with APIs, a lot of it is actually manual work, that you're top of mind with the sellers and that they make sure the availability is live and therefore items are bookable. And on the last side, on the technical side, of course, there's also lots of work. We need to work on the technical state of the platform, work on session to booking. As you saw, the traffic numbers are not a problem at all. So the traffic is there, but session to booking and the willingness to book is actually now the biggest driver of the revenue that we need to influence. And that being said, another big driver is here that actually the right clients get the right inquiries at the right time. And that's really key, and that's something that previously Campanda has not focused so much on. And here we need to make sure that this is handled, and response rate is going to be a big factor in our new search ranking that we're currently building. Good. Next, what are other opportunities to make Campanda profitable? So, of course, we are switching here completely the direction. We do not want to have a growth case. We are now full owner of the company and want to make this company profitable ASAP. What we can do here is use our synergies between the two teams. So using existing sales team with motorhome experts, using the support team, growing the support team with international additions. Of course, we are using also a bigger development team now, which is outsourced in Slovenia to be also cost efficient, working on both platforms. And we're changing the strategy and traffic, and basically working a lot more on the SEO ranking, using the brand recognition that Campanda has, and focus a lot more on an organic versus the paid strategy, because paid in motorhomes is very hard to make ROI positive. And therefore, we want to grow this in an organic and sustainable way. We believe that with these things in place, we have really good opportunities in the future to grow this business even further. And if you look at the market trends, what we see here on Google Trends is that the rise that we already saw over the last years is very likely to develop now even on a much higher pace. For the mentioned reasons, motorhome is very hit now all over the media, and we definitely expect a big rise here still in demand and organic traffic. And it's up to us to convert this demand well and We also believe that the rental companies will keep on buying more RVs and licensing more RVs all over the world, actually, to make sure that this demand is being met. Another good thing is that we have a direct monetization and direct booking model. So unlike the listing and subscription model we have at Arento, we have here a much more dynamic product, which is a USP as well, to be able to offer both models. And on the other hand, if the market develops positively, of course, is a great driver of revenue. Then last, what are our takeaways? So as said, we approach this from a very operational perspective. We are not very experienced previously in M&A deals. What we did is we predicted the best and the worst case scenario. We had a strong hunch that an okay or best case scenario is going to happen with the motorhome sector. We trusted in the market knowledge that we have, and we trusted also in the SEO knowledge that we have to go with this more sustainable and more lean traffic strategy. We use the synergies between the businesses. So as already said in the slide before, you can save a lot of costs by having these synergies, and there might be some synergies that you guys out there can also use with your companies and buying a company that is similar to your business. And what was most important is that we were agile in the moment of crisis. So as other companies needed to quickly digitize, that was not the case here. We're already a marketplace, but Arento's revenue comes to 40% from the event sector. And the event sector, as you can imagine, together with the travel sector, was pretty much the most hit during the pandemic and most affected negatively during the pandemic. And this 40%, of course, we're not going to lose all of that, but we are seeing that this is going to be challenging in the future with events not happening. So therefore, we needed to be very fast, switch our focus, and thought, okay, this is a great opportunity to go for. And with times being tough in other sectors, we need to double down on sectors where we see there is growth potential. So I'm hoping you could get some practical insights for your businesses as well. And unfortunately, with the current Corona development and the next lockdowns being around the corner, maybe these opportunities will come sooner than we like, or maybe they will also be very beneficial in case we can get some good deals out of it. So yeah, I'm curious to see if some of you will also take opportunities here in the future. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Robert. A fantastic and very, very impressive talk. And let me maybe kick off the Q&A with you with a personal question. So, I mean, many people or many companies were talking about, using the pandemic to do stuff like that, right? To go forward and do M&A. But very few actually had the guts. What made you guys move? Because many people were just, trying to, survive, right? And it takes, an extra portion of courage to actually do something and to actually follow and, put your money where your mouth is. So what was the secret ingredient that really made you make such a bold move?
Yeah, thanks. Great question. It was, of course, a mix. So it was very scary, to be honest, because first of all, we have the impact on our own core business. And in this time where you're already going slower on revenue development, you're all of a sudden, you need to make the biggest investment that you've ever made as a company. And that is very scary. I would say that what helped us here is the industry knowledge, that we were very certain that with travel restrictions getting a bit lighter, there is a really big upside. And maybe to give like a broader also picture that works for other sectors, the tip I can give here is, or what was the driver for us, that we really saw that the upside is going to be much more likely than the downside. So the chances that this sector will grow in the near future was much more likely. And in the end, we had to be, we had to have the guts. It helped a lot to have some experts in the house. So Ross Media helped us here a lot, having some M&A knowledge and consulting us here in the process. Also operationally helped a lot, of course. So that was a big driver. Without that background, we probably would not have been able to pull it off so fast. And we also knew that we needed to be really fast, because so that was the potential downside along the road, because if we hadn't been fast, there would have been a lot of other players that 2-3 months later would have seen this, that the industry is booming, and then taken the bait, So we knew that was around the corner, and so we knew it's now or never. So we had to go forward.
Fantastic. Thank you. So now's your time. Please just unmute yourself and ask Robert directly if you want to.
Yeah, Jonas here. Hi, Robert. I'm Jonas Pihlama from Oikotie from Finland. Interested in the acquisition talks. How hard was it to do the negotiations, as the sellers probably were second guessing the future of pandemic at the moment? How did it switch the dynamics? Any reflections?
Yeah, well, of course, during the negotiations, you have to play it smart, as in every sales process, and of course not focus so much on the upside, but more on the current downside. And the downside in this moment of purchasing was very big, and the exposure was very big. So of course we were focusing more on that during the negotiations. So yeah, that's one thing that I would definitely do again the same way. And then going forward, it was tough also starting all of this remotely, I have to say. Normally you're used to meeting people and you're used to building a personal trust. Here it was harder to gain that trust, so we needed to do more digging on the numbers, needed to do more night shifts and really doing a good due diligence process in only 4 weeks, that we were sure that we don't buy anything that's underneath the carpet, which we didn't expect. You know, that was tough. On the other hand, on the actual negotiation process, I would say it is maybe even an advantage to not meet in person, because you can be a bit tougher on the negotiations, and maybe that's even a bit easier than being in the same room.
Well, good points. Thanks.
Further questions to Robert? Please just go ahead.
Yeah, maybe I'll ask what I just asked on the chat. How many people did you keep from the Campanda team? And are you planning to all work from the same office when that's allowed again?
Yeah, so to go first for the second part, yeah, we did that already. So the culture situation actually needed us to boost this process forward. So normally we would have not returned to the office as fast as we did. We were all in mandatory lockdown, as it was in Germany, the rules, for about 2 months. And then after the acquisition, we knew that culture is a really big driver of our team at Arento, and we needed to be very fast in expanding that culture also to the new guys from Campanda. And therefore we actually returned to the office faster than we normally would have, and are still in the office now. With cases going up, of course this will shift a bit more towards remote, but we had an office usage of about 2/3 of the people, because getting the culture up to speed was really key here, and integrating the people is very hard to do over remote. So there you really need to be a remote genius in order to do that well, and we didn't want to take that gamble.
And what did you do for the other third?
Well, it was a rotation principle. So it's not that 1/3 was banned, but we had around 2/3 of the people at one day in the office, and it was always rotating around. So other than the people that are in Slovenia, which are by default remote because we're in Berlin based, we could do this. And also with the Slovenian team, we also try to have face-to-face time whenever we can. So we actually also flew them in when it was possible during the small time window when you could do that. To the amount of people, we took over 6 people out of, at this point, 18. They used to be much bigger in the previous years, though.
Thank you. Further questions?
Robert, may I ask you in regards of pricing, because you know there's a turmoil in time. What about the purchase price negotiations? How you evaluate that? I mean, did COVID had an effect on pricing? Because expectations in a crisis is always not very fantastic for the seller side, I would say. Is there an influence you can say, or you can give us an advice how to do it in the next acquisition?
Yeah, so in this moment, there was for sure an influence. I, of course, can't disclose any numbers here, but as said, the situation looked very dark in the moment where we started the negotiations. So of course, we were using that to some extent to drive the price lower. And also with the company not being ROI positive beforehand, this was of course for Campanda and the previous investors was not such a desired timing. So when you have a company that maybe is a bit struggling or is working well pre-pandemic or maybe currently, but the next wave is hitting us and another lockdown is hitting us, and now this is kind of the last blast to this company, then of course you can use that. And under normal market conditions, I don't think we would have done it. So with like pricing how it was 2-3 years ago, there's no way we could have done it. We were just too small for that. But being agile and using this exact time window where pricing is maybe a bit more favorable for the buyer because of the crisis situation, that enabled us to take the leap of faith.
Thanks. Thank you.
Further questions to Robert?
Well, I just read out my question. Great story, Robert.
Thanks.
Nice talk. Well, post-merger integration is always a huge challenge, right? What were your biggest surprises as of today? And what was easier and what was harder from what you expected?
Biggest surprises were that the traffic was growing that fast. I think we all had some models and future outlooks, what we expected to happen. We didn't expect it actually to bounce back that fast. Some surprises were that the booking behavior, however, has changed. So even though you have a lot more traffic, that does not translate one-to-one in a lot more bookings. So it's actually harder to monetize the traffic that's on the platform and to make sure that it actually converts. Here, there's a lot more devil in the detail, where we saw that this was previously done with a lot of manual effort, and where we in the future have a lot of opportunity to make this happen on a more automated basis, having, as said, smart search engines that pushes the right sellers at the right time with availability and with active responses. And a lot of these things were previously done manually. And here we have big potential in automation. And we expected some of that, but I don't think we expected this booking behavior to be so different to the amount of traffic versus the amount of potential bookings that you can get out of it.
Thank you very much. Further questions to Robert?
Hi, Robert. A quick question that I'm not sure if you want to answer, I'd be grateful. Seeing how the market for the next year is going to grow very fast, or is helping with the bounce back very fast, do you see any concern for competitors trying to be faster? And seeing that in particular, as I see someone from Paul Camper in the audience, feel free to answer, or if not, it's fine too.
Yeah, of course, happy to answer. Hi, Oliver. So, of course, we're not the only ones that noticed this trend. As said, luckily we were fast in the moment, but now we see that the sector is very popular. We see that there was just now a huge investment in the US market into RV share, which raised 100 million. So pretty much the US market for us is almost a done deal, with now having two gigantic competitors there that got a lot of funding. We almost don't even need to try hard there anymore, but there's still a lot of markets where we do see a lot of upside and where the competitors have not really doubled down. So I think, yeah, it's going to be more coveted, and luckily we have a good base in already lots of countries across Europe, and so does Paul Camper, and they're also using this growth very well. And of course they're more established because we just acquired the companies, so there's a bit more groundwork for us to do. But I think with this market development, from what we see currently, there should be enough cake for everyone to eat here.
Wonderful, thank you.
Further questions? Just use the opportunity, unmute yourself and give it a go. And actually, also at this point, I would like to invite you to a little bit, maybe even broaden the topic. So after me saying also thank you to Robert now, so you're of course free to ask any question, not only to Robert, but also Magda is still here, and to open up the floor a little bit to more some general remarks and discussions about post-pandemic times. So now let's use maybe a little bit of time that remains here. So approximately some 10 minutes left for our today's session. discuss a little bit more openly about other aspects of the pandemic situation and where we're headed. And if you have questions or remarks that you want to share with the group, now's the time. So please go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to ask a question now in return. So I was wondering if other platforms have some similar stories, maybe not of acquisition, but of shift of focus, where they noticed that they needed to quickly focus on a new sector or on a new field of monetization, and some success stories where this worked out well.
I'll pick that question up, Robert. And a great presentation. Thanks. It was super interesting. So for us, we are a horizontal. So the company is called Publi24, the main horizontal that I run. And obviously, a horizontal is a collection of several verticals. And one vertical that we never really paid any attention to, like zero, is tourism and accommodation. And what happened now with the COVID is exactly what you have seen. Obviously, people could not travel internationally. So local tourism exploded. And for a certain part of the market, the Airbnb and Booking.com were not really options, because not everybody is so sophisticated that they use Airbnb, etc. So the traffic on our competing horizontals and on the tourist verticals in Romania increased. And what we did currently is we verticalized this category with specific filters, etc. And actually, we bought a small player that had a wonderful domain, which works very well with our brand. It's called Accommodation24, pretty much in Romanian. So we bought that domain, and we're now building up quite quickly an accommodation vertical. And we're also looking at acquiring some of the big guys, because I mean, we have a few thousand listings already on our horizontal, so we will exist, and we can use our SEO force to really make this brand quickly to have a bit of impact. But we're looking at acquisitions, and we're looking at the tourist market, which normally was not something that we would be interested in. So accommodation was really out of our focus. We were really focusing on jobs, cars, real estate, the classic classified stuff. So yeah, this is one thing. We're definitely looking at this and looking at M&A in this sector. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, and maybe since we have actually Dirk Wese here from Paul Kemper. Dirk, do you want to share a few words? Maybe just as an add-on, or rounding off the picture that Robert has been sharing with us about his campaign experience. So what's Paul Kemper's view of the market?
Mike, sorry, I just switched in 10 minutes ago. Okay. I hadn't got it in my schedule. LinkedIn was reminding me, so I'm sorry that I missed probably most of it. But happy to give some spontaneous answers. You were asking about how the pandemic affected us.
Yeah. Maybe you can give us your view on this market. Would be fantastic.
I think
having heard you now that you missed the session, we are actually recording this, and you're in position to have a look at the recording, which will be featured on the ICMA website for you to have a look.
Pretty cool. So the pandemic, as worse or as bad as it is for us, actually it's an opportunity, and that's how we treated it right from the beginning. So of course, in March, when everything dropped down to almost zero, it was a new situation, especially for me as a first-time founder. But we quite fast shifted to accepting the external circumstances and reacting fast on it, and then preparing what comes next. So we shifted our goal setting towards only having two goals for the immediate future, which was surviving the crisis, meaning cash on the bank account, and second, rise like a phoenix, meaning being instantly ready when the market, when the demand is coming back. So that's why we were, I think, one of the rare travel startups that didn't go to hibernation. We were kind of fully keep on working. I mean, we the two goals needed to be they're contradictive. So saving cash at the same time keep on investing. So we tried to go a middle way. We used the short-term work instrument, but only 25% of it. So the people stood with 75%, and the management team stood at 100%, but accepted a decrease of salary of 25%. So we were all sitting in one boat and doing best that we can. And so we were working in the upcoming month on the product, and then since then we're growing over 100% year over year. Now it's getting down a bit because of kind of the second wave. So what we see is a shift in customer behavior even more than before. That will also be the fundament of our future strategy. So I expect that it's going down pretty much in the upcoming month. But again, that won't stop us from preparing everything again for, let's say, spring or hopefully earlier.
Thanks for these insights, Dirk. Fantastic. So further remarks or questions? Anything you would like to share or ask a question? Now's your time to use the remaining couple of minutes before we would then wrap it up, and I would give you a short insight into tomorrow's program.
Shall we use the questions that are in the chat? There are two.
Thank you. So, Anirudh, would you like to maybe speak up and ask your question live? Makes it just a little bit more interactive, if you want to. Or the same goes for Elias. Okay. So we have a mic issue on Anirudh's side, so I'll just read it out. So in pandemic, general question, in pandemic period, apart from giving discounts and better deals to customers, as well as cost cutting, what could be other business model changes for classifieds and marketplaces? Any spontaneous reactions from the group to that?
Yeah, I could maybe at least some ideas have been presented in the jobs market. There is a lot of people now looking for a job, so kind of having training and consulting, sparring services for the job seekers. That could be a job opportunity. Nothing that we have currently implemented, but something to consider. And also kind of the other side, how the recruiters should act in this market position. So kind of auxiliary services towards recruiters is, at least in the jobs vertical, something to think about.
If I could just come in there as well, if you don't mind.
Sure, please.
My name is Lee Hines, and we're with Beagle. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about in those business model changes is a very interesting piece by a guy called Mike Del Preti about changes in the real estate market space. And what he talks about is getting closer to the transaction aspect of it. He talks about how the portals need to add value to their experience to customers, be they both the purchasers coming onto the sites and also the estate agents that they're dealing with. So adding value to the experience over and above increasing fees as they go along. So I know some of them have started doing the virtual tours and that kind of stuff, but what we actually do, we power portals in the transaction space. So for connecting bidding, online bidding and contract sales and that kind of stuff. So those business model changes, I think, are what's coming down, particularly in relation to the property space. And I was the one who asked Magda that particular question in relation to, and I was surprised that you came back at property, because that's exactly what I was thinking in my head. You know, it's the largest, probably the largest volume-wise or cash-wise, it's the largest one that's out there. And it's also the slowest one to change because they're big ticket, low volume sales, and it's so high pressure. But I think you are right. It's that property space that's probably, I think, is going to see the biggest element of disruption as a consequence in this. And my feeling is it's going to be around that business model change of what was raised earlier.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your comment, and cannot agree more. But what I would also say is that, you know, having thought about it right now, we are seeing companies wanting to tackle that and also digitize the processes, but I think just like the adoption will take much longer to increase. For example, there's a company called Kiko that basically does virtual tours and takes the apartments full stack. They take the responsibility of the apartment and then they lease it. So there is innovation, but I would just expect the time required to change the habits to take much longer, right? And then also depends on the sector of property, probably more innovation in the renting space rather than selling. So yeah, to your point, still a slow moving industry. But I think maybe also another point here is that we're seeing a bit of a lag, right? That this is not the industry that will suddenly like switch and change everything. It's not as agile. Just due to the brick and mortar nature of it. We'll see.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid it's the end of today's session. Thank you very, very much for joining us and tuning in today. It's been a pleasure, and it's actually not the end of it, because we're continuing tomorrow, and there will be plenty of more time and opportunity for you to discuss and ask questions. And I want to say a big thanks to the speakers that we had today with us, and also you know, introduce you a little bit or give you a short outlook on what's the plan for tomorrow. So first of all, let me say a big thank you to the speakers of today. So we had Fabrice Grinda here, we had Magda, and finally today we had Robert. And tomorrow we will also again start at 3 p.m. Central European Time, kicking it off with Ovidio Solomonov from Adevinta, who's heading, or he's Senior Vice President for Global Markets and also Ventures at Adevinta. And he's going to be speaking tomorrow a little bit about the questions, what's the next big thing in marketplaces? And secondly, what will COVID do to the industry long term? So more of, so to speak, future talk from Ovidio. The second session is going to be with Arun Sundararajan, who is a very well-known professor from the New York University. He is holding the Harold Prize, a professor, and he's going to be speaking about again, also about the post-COVID era, obviously a little bit. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing tomorrow in his talk about the studies that he did. And he has some very, you know, he's been doing some really in-depth research with some of the big guys from the industry. So he will be quoting and giving us some insights into the work that he's done for Airbnb, but also for Uber Eats and more of that. And wrapping it up tomorrow, we will have Colin Sneed from, who's the CEO and co-founder actually of Alpaca. Alpaca is, in case you have not heard of them yet, they are around since 2010, and they are a provider for actually, you know, all of this transactional business. So they're aggregating partial delivery and doing such solutions in the C2C as well as in the B2C area. And he's going to be telling us how it went from you know, having 100K orders to now a well above 1 million orders per year that they're handling. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing that story tomorrow. And again, as always, we want to keep and try to have this as interactive as possible. So you will have, of course, opportunity to ask your questions, come in and have also a more general discussion as we had it today at the end, and using the time to discuss and chat a little bit with peers from the industry. So thank you very much. I think we have also for tomorrow a really fantastic lineup waiting for you. And yeah, I wish you a very good evening, and I hope to see you tomorrow. Yeah, thank you very much. Stay safe, stay healthy. See you tomorrow. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Great job, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.